So, Jim Turpin.
Morning.
Morning.
I'm glad you opened with that thing about the 5 minutes, because I'm very unhappy about this, as it is, because I believe you have not engaged properly in your own policies about significance and engagement. I only discovered in this report today that you said that you would engage, and I've only found this today, and you didn't with all of us. And democracy really demands, which I allude to in my submission several times, demands that we should do things properly. By allocating 5 minutes, you've reduced us all to the lowest common denominator. Now, I may be that with regards to this thing, but if I am, then you've failed badly on the time that you should give us to present our cases. The system itself doesn't allow me to question you, to engage, so I have no idea what you think. I have no idea where I'm going wrong. You don't have time to question me because my 5 minutes will be up. It fails badly, and it fails under your own system. So all I'm going to say is, as I go ahead and try and highlight my 7 pages, it took me 2 or 3 days of research and preparation, that you've now limited me to this small amount of time to try and do something. If you don't ask me anything, I'll have to accept that you agree with what I say.
No, that's not appropriate, I'm sorry. That we have got 5 minutes and I explain why. Can you answer a question for me, though, before you use any more time? Did you receive a letter from the council's management in relation to the proposed changes after they were published in the LTP, and were you invited to a public meeting in any way, shape or form?
I was invited to one for the whole general crowd, yes.
So when was that?
I wasn't invited, I got it, I saw it in the newspaper or something, and I went to the Riccarton Service Centre. Right. And Vicky Buck was there, and she told me I didn't even know it was in the plan. Right, so I said, well, that's interesting.
So you did receive a letter? And
not an individual letter, well, I don't call it an individual letter. I looked up, there were things in the paper, weren't there, and things like that, and said there's going to be public meetings here to discuss the whole things. Right. Right, and I went along.
So it was only to discuss the LTP, not to discuss this?
It was only to discuss the LTP.
It wasn't a special meeting for the It wasn't a special meeting for the rural differential.
I've said no, it wasn't 3 times now.
No. I wanted you to say it 3 times. Is
I'll
that
say
okay?
It again. No.
No. So it's just that because you've referred to this document, and I'm not taking this off your time. So can you just stop the clock for a minute? Management plans to write to all identified property owners in advance to ensure that they have an opportunity to provide a submission to the LTP. Yes. You received an individual letter?
I did.
And I haven't seen a copy of that letter. Have we got a draft? Have we got a copy of what was sent out?
I've got one here.
That would be fantastic if we could get a copy of that.
I'd like to read it now.
And then consideration will be given to holding public meetings where there are a material number of affected ratepayers in a neighbourhood, but you weren't invited to a meeting in your neighbourhood specifically for this purpose. It was for the purpose of the LTP generally.
Yes.
And you went along to talk about this issue at a general meeting on the LTP.
Along with quite a lot of other people.
Right. And was that really the main reason that people turned up?
No, it was the whole issue of the LTP, but it was a sizable group.
Right.
But we had the same restrictions there, if you recall, Vicky. The chairman or the facilitator, there was a guy there who is outside the council, was a facilitator or something like that. He said, if someone's already spoken, please don't speak. We've got to go through a whole lot of things. So I didn't present because 2 or 3 people got up before me and said they'd spoken. So I actually spoke on something I'd like to do, was a sale of the city assets, but I said something there, well, I agree, forget the stadium, that can wait for many years, you know. I would have liked to have submitted on a lot more, but I had this in front of me.
Right, okay. All right, so we're going to get a copy of the letter. And
it's got a whole lot of my scrawlings over it. I hope there's nothing offensive.
And if we could start the clock all over again. Is that all right?
Big pardon?
I'm going to start the clock
fine,
again.
Yes.
No, go back to the beginning. Can you go back to 5? Yeah, reset. There you go. So the floor is yours.
I seek the removal of that part of the plan that recommends changes to the rural differential rating policy as shown on page 9 and 86 of the Smart Choices. This has been heard before the Council many times before, the latest in 2002 and 2004, and the good reasons they were rejected then are rejected now. I believe they still remain today. This was a staff-initiated policy, I believe, which is supposed to be revenue neutral, and so I can't see why we're wasting our time doing it when you've got so many more things to do with the critical to the city than this. I've presented some figures there to say that it's infinitesimal what the effect is if it is revenue neutral, how it affects us, other people. It's based on a contestable and arbitrary land area, which the council has over many years put out contradictory things on it when they've looked at it. And as I say, and as we've just talked about, it's done without prior consultation in the group. I believe that we would have fitted into your significance and engagement policy, because 1,000 residents, over $1 million worth of thing, I believe is significant. So I believe democracy has been taken a knock on the head here, and it's quite contrary in many ways to how our law operates. It was going to be a mandatory introduction of this, so we're guilty before we're even proved innocent. Our law says that we should be proved guilty before we have to prove we're innocent, right? So it's going to be embracing all on everybody, and then they've got to do the other way around. Now, the differential rural rating policy, I think most of you councillors here and certainly staff won't know the background to it. Well, it came in about 1989 when about 4 or 5 different things were merged into the greater city, and it was to reflect the mainly rural aspect of those other counties other than the city council, other authorities than that. And that seems, as I say, somewhere you'll find that there's supposed to be 548 properties, and I see in this thing that Ross presented today that they're all going to be charged rates again. Well, that's a misnomer. I think it's misleading, but when you look at that, it probably fits in with the policy of 5 acres being the lower limit, or 2 hectares, not 5 hectares. And it's quite interesting, I find, that where included in this policy, I was referred to a primary residential thing in 2006. It was sneaked in unheralded without consultation again by the officers who presumably had taken the knock in 2004 when it was found that the existing policy was correct. What is clear, though, that rural activities that cannot happen in town do happen on rural properties, and that's what defines them. Now, I've gone on to explain why the differential. I won't go through it again, and I'm not allowed to ask you now if you disagree with them, so I'll just pass over them, but I do list a number there that are very relevant. We heard Ross say before something about why shouldn't Waimari and Selwyn and all of that pay rates if they use the facilities, and we've been asked, well, you live in the country, it doesn't matter. Why? You should still pay for the facilities in town if you don't use them. Well, we pay for them every time we buy a cup of coffee, every time we go in and get a puncture repaired on our thing, every time. Everybody pays rates. Even people who rent their houses, who aren't on a pay it directly, they pay their rates. So don't come back with that question to me. I won't dwell too much on the arbitrary selection of the criteria, whether it's 5 acres, 10 acres, 100 acres, whether it's operated on a full or part-time basis. But with regards to the capital value, if you do things on the capital value, and I don't know what the correct figure is, you penalise people for bettering themselves. So a person gets their property and they get a nicer house, they work hard, they do that, so they suddenly rise above this mythical figure, and so you say, bang, you're out, right? You stop working, stop being a good citizen. And anyway, for interest's sake, just say a ratepayer out in the country is predominantly residential, they should have it anyway. They miss all these other things that I've itemised out there before. They are in the country, they are residential. Now, the disproportionate burden on rural ratepayers, you'll have seen my analysis, I hope, at point 5. where I've analysed the general rating system and the number of ratepayers in each particular area, and how much rates they pay in the general rate. And you can work out as many variations as you like, but you can see that rural ratepayers, who represent 1.9% of the total ratepayers at the present time, even with the differential, pay 2.5% of the rates. They're already paying a huge burden in advance. If you remove this thing and put the 13 cents a week back on the town ones, they'll be paying 2.3 times the amount of rates average of a residential ban in town. Now, that's persecution in some ways. Now, I know that you're burdened with the system of rating on property, but really people use the services, people use things, and there's only on average as many people in a rural property as there is as a residential in town property. So it's hardly fair, and so I'd say leave it alone again. Now, the rural property is already precluded from the differential. You've heard that there's 548, and if you've read this and taken that for gospel, have a look at the analysis that I've done of those properties at my point 6, where, well, I won't go through it again. You have a look. I believe only 108 of them may qualify, not the 548. So there's been some misleading things given to you, in my view. It's misleading in your smart choices list where it says they're all going to get it. Now, having said this, I do understand that the council staff and you guys as well have been under immense pressure with the earthquake and everything, and these things can be missed, and I'm sorry, but it's still not a very good look as far as I'm concerned.
I'm going to have to interrupt.
I have allowed, plenty of extra time to make up for the interruption, which we are analysing and which we will certainly feed back to you. It is the council's intention to feed back to all of the submitters. We've got written submissions as well as oral ones. The points that you've made in your submission, you've made very well, and we will be taking all of these matters into account as we deliberate on what is, as you've identified in your last comments, a pretty hard set of decisions that we need to make. But thank you very much. I think you've presented the case on this extremely well. We've got a much better understanding of the sequence of events, and fantastic that you are able to bring the actual letter to confirm that it didn't reference a particular public meeting for you to attend. So I think that's been an excellent submission, but I need to move on to the next one. We've got people who have been invited to present as well, and they need to be given the opportunity to do so.
Thank you. I'm sorry I didn't have time to engage with you all.
I know, and we would have, but actually you did engage with us, and you have made
a one-sided engagement.
You've made a very significant difference. No, we asked you for information, you gave it to us.